Welcome back to Biz Asia America. I'm now joined by Rui Chenggang from CCTV. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. You've been at this conference now for nearly 14 years in a row, and I'm sure a lot has changed since then. But the topic of China has increasingly become bigger and bigger. You had the honor of hosting a fairly significant topic regarding U.S., Europe, and China relations. And I wanted to ask you, what was your outtake on that? What was the sense from the delegates that you spoke to and the panelists that you were able to host with?
Thank you for having me. It is true a lot has changed since 14 years ago, but there are certain things that don't change that much. For instance, the perceptions about China. There have been a lot of improvements, a lot of communications done over the past decade or more, but you hear a lot of arguments in Davos from the past and now, and that how the economy will be running out of steam. There are a lot of misperceptions about China. Usually, there's only one particular kind of misperceptions, or in our opinion, wrong judgment about China. And topping our list would be either how the Chinese economy will collapse, how the Chinese economy will be soon running out of steam. And the second on the list would be how China's rise is a threat to the world. So you get that a lot. Usually they alternate. Either China's going to collapse or... Yeah,
why do you think there is that perception? Because a lot of people notice that there's this extreme perception that either China is going to be great or it's going to collapse. Do you get a sense from what the feeling is and why they feel that strongly about that?
I think there's a big communications gap, understanding gap out there. China has tried very hard to communicate itself to the rest of the world and to build up a narrative that's easy for people from the rest of the world to understand. But somehow China is a very complicated country, and China in some ways does not look like that of the Europe, or China does not look like the United States in many different ways. So it's and lack of understanding creates misperceptions, and there's also a lot of misinformation going on. So this year, what I witnessed is simultaneously we both have the perceptions about how the economy will have a hard landing, running out of steam, or collapse, and how China's rise militarily or strategically will pose a threat to its neighbors. So you get both of those arguments this year in Davos, to which the Chinese participants, the Chinese community here, will have to address at multiple occasions.
And I guess that's the big question, is how does China address the perceived threat that it has to its neighbors from the people that you speak to here? I mean, what ultimately is going to be maybe not the right solution, but probably the best solution for China to address this issue?
I think China has been addressing those perceptions all along. Our foreign minister, Wang Yi, is here. He delivered a very good speech and a very insightful Q&A with the participants to help them better understand where China stands on many issues, international and domestic. But somehow, those perceptions will always persist. And those perceptions were created partly due to the fact that the most influential media here at the WEF in Davos are the English media, i.e. American and British media. So if they run a lot of stories like those perceptions tend to persist. At the end of the day, Davos is a venue where the most dominant voices are English voices, in the language of English. Not Chinese, not French, not Indian. And also the most dominant agendas were pretty much set by those in Europe and in the United States. So there's a very strong atmosphere that the agenda is set by those countries.
For